The first thing I heard when I opened my eyes was the deafening roar of explosions. The second was someone whispering my name, a name that wasn't even mine. Destiny, it seemed, had a sick sense of humor. One second I was crossing a street in downtown Chicago. The next I was lying inside the fragile body of an Omega with a failing heart, promised in marriage to the man the Empire considered its greatest monster. My new name was Elias, and my new fiancé was Adrian Blackthorne, the Empire's most dangerous alpha. No one would ever believe me if I said I didn't belong here, that I wasn't really this fragile young man with trembling fingers and a heart that skipped too many beats. In this world, lives were determined by designations alpha, beta, omega, futures carved in stone by biology, by bonds, by the iron hands of tradition. And mine, apparently, had been carved cruelly. Adrian Blackthorne wasn't just my enemy. He was the Empire's nightmare, brilliant, ruthless, scarred by years of betrayal, and destined to bring the government to its knees. The only thing more terrifying than his rage was the silence that followed when he looked at me, like he could see through my bones and taste the lies in my blood. The engagement had been arranged long before I'd woken in this body. A political maneuver to bind an Omega with noble blood to a rebel alpha, meant to secure peace. But everyone knew it was a leash, a trap designed to control him. And now I was the one tethered to the chain. The first time I really met him, was on a balcony overlooking the neon-soaked skyline of future Manhattan. The city glittered beneath us like a living organism, but all I could feel was the suffocating presence of the man beside me. His suit was midnight black, his silver eyes cutting sharper than the cold wind. "You're trembling," he said, his voice low, smooth, and terrifyingly calm. "Is it fear or your heart again?" Both. I wanted to scream. Instead, I forced a brittle smile. "Does it matter?" His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "It matters to me." That was the moment I realized just how dangerous this man was. Not because of the way he could command armies with a glance, but because his gaze carried a strange softness when it lingered on me. The Empire branded him a monster, but monsters didn't look at people like that. And yet, I couldn't afford to believe in softness. Not when every beat of my borrowed heart was numbered. Not when my presence here was already a ticking clock. I learned quickly that living as Elias meant inhabiting fragility. My body betrayed me, often shortness of breath, climbing stairs, dizzy spells that stole my vision, pain like a knife twisting in my chest when I pushed too far. And yet, everyone treated me like porcelain, a delicate object meant to sit still and look beautiful. Everyone except Adrian. He watched me with the intensity of someone dissecting a puzzle. He never carried me when I stumbled, never coddled me when I faltered. Instead, he held me steady by the wrist, as if daring me to prove I could stand on my own. "You'll break me?" I whispered once, when my chest tightened after a spar of words turned too sharp. "No," he replied without hesitation. "You'll break yourself if you keep pretending you're weak." I hated him for saying it. I hated him more for being right. Days blurred into weeks, and the lines between enemy and fiancé began to warp. I discovered pieces of Adrian the world refused to see the way his hand lingered near mine when we walked through corridors filled with political vultures, the way he lowered his voice when my heart stuttered too loudly, the way he looked at me like I wasn't a trap but something worth protecting. But the Empire's claws were everywhere. Every gala, every public dinner, every speech was a performance of chains. We were the perfect couple on stage, a promise of peace. But behind closed doors, silence grew heavier, tension sharper, and the shadow of war never left Adrian's shoulders. One night, I found him in his office, staring at holographic maps glowing red with enemy strongholds. His fists were clenched on the table, veins standing out against his pale skin. "You don't have to fight alone," I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. His head turned, silver eyes locking onto me with a mixture of fury and disbelief. "You think you can stand beside me? You can barely stand at all." The words cut deeper than I expected. But then his voice broke, softer this time. "If I let you close, you'll be the first thing they use against me. And I can't. I won't let that happen." It was the first time I heard his fear. Not of war, Not of death, but of losing me. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I didn't hate him anymore. I was falling. But falling in love with Adrian Blackthorne was like standing on the edge of a cliff during a storm. Every step closer to him meant risking the drop. I dreamed of a heart strong enough to hold him, of a world where we weren't bound by politics or betrayal. But I also knew the truth-me heart wasn't made for long futures. Every beat was a borrowed second, and eventually he would be left alone again. The irony wasn't lost on me. The one meant to chain the Empire's most dangerous man, was the one trapped in chains of flesh and blood. And yet, even knowing all this, I couldn't stop reaching for him. Even when the shadows closed in. Even when the Empire whispered that peace was only an illusion. Even when my heart reminded me, again and again, that love was the most dangerous rebellion of all. That night, when he pulled me against him for the first time, it wasn't a kiss born of tenderness. It was fire, war, desperation. His hands trembled against my fragile frame as though he hated himself for wanting me this much, as though every second we touched was both salvation and damnation. "You'll ruin me," he growled against my lips. I laughed through the tears burning my eyes. "You were ruined long before me." And yet, we clung to each other like drowning men in a sea too vast to survive. Because maybe, just maybe, love was the only weapon left that could shatter the Empire. I thought I understood what it meant to live on borrowed time. But nothing prepared me for the moment my heart gave out in Adrian's arms. The world had been crashing down around Usrin's wailing, the Empire's forces closing in, flames clawing at the night sky. And yet all I saw was him, kneeling in the mud, his arms wrapped around me as if sheer willpower could restart a failing heart. His voice shook for the first time, ragged and desperate, as he whispered my name. "Elias, stay with me. Damn it, stay with me." It was ironic, really. The Empire called him a monster, but in that moment, Adrian looked more human than anyone I had ever known. His eyes weren't made of steel. They were filled with terror. When I woke again, the beeping of machines replaced the chaos of battle. My body felt hollow, as though every vein and bone had been borrowed once more. Adrian was there beside me, his head bowed against my bed, his hand gripping mine with a desperation he no longer bothered to hide. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered, my voice breaking. "They'll arrest you. They can kill me if they want," he said without lifting his head. "But I'm not leaving you." And for the first time, I believed him. The Empire fractured like glass after that night. Whispers turned into revolts, soldiers questioned their loyalty, and the people looked at Adrian not as a villain, but as a man who bled for them. His rebellion was no longer a shadow where it was fire consuming the very foundation of power. But fire burns indiscriminately. Our engagement had always been a weapon for the Empire, and now it became their last card to play. They dragged my name into their propaganda, painting me as a hostage of the traitor general. They accused Adrian of manipulating me, breaking me, holding me prisoner in his rebellion. The irony was suffocating, because the truth was simple: I had never been freer than when I was with him. Still, lies are powerful. The more they spread, the more dangerous it became for me to remain by his side. One night, as we hid in a safe house on the outskirts of ruined Boston, Adrian turned to me with that haunted look again, the one that said he was preparing to cut his own heart out. "You need to leave," he said, his voice flat, controlled. Too controlled. "No. You think this is negotiable?" He slammed his fist against the wall, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "You're dying, Elias. Every day your heart is killing you. And if they get their hands on you, they'll use you until nothing is left. I don't care. You should." His voice cracked then, breaking apart like the walls around us. He dragged his hand through his silver hair, trembling. "You should care because I can't fight this war and watch you disappear in my arms. I can't." I stood, swaying from the effort, and placed my palm flat against his chest. His heart thundered beneath my hand. Steady, strong. Everything mine wasn't. "You once told me I'd break myself pretending to be weak," I whispered. "But don't you see? The only weakness I have is not being with you. If my heart is going to fail, I want it to fail fighting by your side. Not alone in some gilded cage. His breath hitched, his body leaning forward until his forehead rested against mine. You'll ruin me, he said again, softer this time, almost a plea. I smiled through my tears. Then let's ruin each other. The final battle came at dawn. The Empire's capital rose like a shining jewel on the horizon, its towers scraping the clouds, its streets lined with soldiers prepared to bleed for a corrupt throne. And we, the so-called traitors, stood at the gates with nothing but fractured armies, tattered banners, and hope held together by desperation. I should have been terrified. My body was failing more often now, chest pains, dizzy spells, moments when darkness swallowed everything. But as Adrian's hand tightened around mine, grounding me, I felt only clarity. If I had only one more day to live, I wanted it to be this one. War is never beautiful. It is blood and screams and fire tearing through the sky. But in the chaos, I saw something that was beautiful. I saw Adrian, his voice commanding, his blade cutting through lies as much as enemies, his presence a beacon that pulled men and women forward when fear threatened to drown them. And when I stumbled, when my knees buckled beneath the weight of my failing body, he was there, every time, catching me, steadying me, shielding me with his own strength as though I was the most important battlefield he had to protect. By the time the palace gates fell, the Empire had already lost. Inside the throne room, beneath the shattered banners of power, Adrian faced the Emperor who had called him monster. I stood beside him, trembling but unbroken. Kill me? The Emperor spat, defiant even as his world burned. But Adrian only shook his head. You're not worth the blood on my hands. He turned, his gaze finding mine, and for a moment the war disappeared. There was only us. Peace didn't come easily. It never does. The Empire needed rebuilding, wounds needed healing, and power vacuums begged to be filled. Adrian became both hero and target, beloved and feared. And Mephregile, Dying Eye, became the symbol of what this war had truly been about. Not politics, not thrones, but freedom to choose. There were nights I wondered if my heart would give out before I saw what future we were fighting for. But Adrian never let me linger in despair. He carried hope for both of us, stubborn and relentless, as if daring the universe to take me from him. And then, one night, he returned to our chamber with a small box in his hand. His fingers trembled as he opened it, revealing a ring that glowed softly under the lamplight. Not a political ring, he said, his voice hoarse. Not a chain, just a promise. Marry me, Elias, for real this time. Tears blurred my vision, and my chest ached not from illness, but from the sheer weight of love. Yes, I whispered. Yes, Adrian. The ceremony was nothing like the grand spectacle our engagement had been. It was quiet, intimate, just us and the handful of people who had survived to stand beside us. When Adrian slid the ring onto my finger, his eyes burned with the kind of devotion that could set entire worlds aflame. In that moment, I realized something profound. Maybe my heart was broken, fragile, fleeting. Maybe it would never beat as strong as his. But it beat for him. Every stutter, every painful gasp, every fleeting second, it was his. And somehow that made it enough. Years later, when people spoke of the war, they called Adrian a savior, a rebel, a leader. But when they looked at me, they saw something else. Not just the Omega with a weak heart. Not just the fiancé who defied an empire. They saw the one who chose love, even when the world said it was impossible. Because love, in the end, was the rebellion that won. And as long as Adrian's hand was in mine, I knew I hadn't been cursed to live on borrowed time. I had been blessed to spend every last second exactly where I belonged. With him. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.